The need for truth is more sacred than any other, yet it is never mentioned. When one has once realized the quantity and enormity of the falsehoods spread without shame, even in the books of the most reputable authors, one reads as if drinking water from a doubtful well. There are men who work 8 hours a day and make the great effort to read in the evening to educate themselves. They cannot check facts in major libraries. They believe the book on its word. One has no right to feed them falsehood. What sense does it make to allege that the authors are acting in good faith? They do not work physically 8 hours a day. Society feeds them so that they have the leisure and take the trouble to avoid error. A switchman who causes a derailment would be poorly received by alleging that he is acting in good faith. Even more shameful is it to tolerate the existence of newspapers of which everyone knows that no contributor could remain there if he did not sometimes knowingly alter the truth. The public distrusts newspapers, but its distrust does not protect it. Knowing roughly that a newspaper contains truths and lies, it divides the news announced between these two headings, but at random, according to its preferences. It is thus exposed to error. Everyone knows that when journalism merges with the organization of falsehood, it constitutes a crime, but it is believed that it is an unpunishable crime. What can possibly prevent the punishment of an activity once it has been recognized as criminal? Where can this strange conception of unpunishable crimes possibly come from? It is one of the most monstrous deformations of the legal mind. Would it not be time to proclaim that any discernible crime is punishable, and that one is resolved, if one has the opportunity, to punish all crimes? A few easy public health measures would protect the population from attacks on the truth. The first would be the establishment, for this protection, of special courts, highly honored, composed of magistrates specially chosen and trained. They would be held to punish public reprobation for any avoidable error, and could impose imprisonment and hard labor in the case of frequent recidivism, aggravated by proven bad faith. For example, an admirer of ancient Greece, reading in the latest book by Maritain, the greatest thinkers of antiquity did not think of condemning slavery, would bring Maritain before one of these courts. He would bring the only important text that has come down to us on slavery, that of Aristotle. He would have the magistrates read the phrase, "Some say that slavery is absolutely contrary to nature and to reason." He would observe that nothing suggests that these few were not among the greatest thinkers of antiquity. The court would blame Maritain for having printed, when it was so easy for him to avoid the error, a false statement that constituted, albeit unintentionally, an atrocious calumny against an entire civilization. All daily, weekly, and other newspapers, all magazines, and the radio would be required to bring to the attention of the public the court's blame, and, if applicable, Maritain's response. In this specific case, there could hardly be one. On the day when Gringoire published in extenso a speech attributed to a Spanish anarchist who had been announced as a speaker at a Parisian meeting, but who in fact, at the last moment, had been unable to leave Spain, such a tribunal would not have been superfluous. The bad faith being in such a case more obvious than 2 and 2 make 4, prison or hard labor might not have been too severe. In this system, it would be permitted to anyone who has recognized an avoidable error in a printed text or in a radio broadcast to bring an accusation before these courts. The second measure would be to absolutely prohibit all propaganda of any kind by radio or by the daily press. These two instruments would be allowed to serve only for non-tendentious information. The courts mentioned above would ensure that the information is not tendentious. For the information organs, they could have to judge not only the erroneous statements, but also the voluntary and tendentious omissions. The circles where ideas circulate and who want to make them known would only be entitled to weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly organs. There is no need for a higher frequency if one wants to make people think and not stupefy them. The correction of the means of persuasion would be ensured by the surveillance of the same courts, which could suppress an organ in the case of too frequent alteration of the truth, but its editors could make it reparatura under another name. In all this, there would be not the slightest infringement on public liberties. There would be satisfaction of the most sacred need of the human soul, the need for protection against suggestion and error. But who guarantees the impartiality of the judges? It will be objected. The only guarantee, apart from their total independence, is that they come from very different social backgrounds, that they are naturally gifted with a broad, clear, and precise intelligence, and that they are trained in a school where they receive an education that is not primarily legal but spiritual first and foremost, and intellectual secondarily. They must be accustomed to loving the truth. There is no possibility of satisfying the need for truth in a people if one cannot find for this purpose men who love the truth.